Welcome to Ready for Real Estate. I'm Lauren. Whether you're renting your first apartment, buying a family home, or building an investment portfolio, this show's about the strategy and the nuts and bolts of the industry. We believe real estate is the most versatile tool for building wealth, but you have to know how to use it. We're here to help you navigate the shifts so that when opportunity knocks, you'll be ready. Let's get into it.
Hey folks, welcome back to Ready for Real Estate. It's Matt Grace with our co-host Lauren Pio talking about getting ready for real estate. In this time and these crazy days, we have our first return guest, Logan Swanson, the
Hey,
land expert. Hey Logan, how are you?
okay. I'm glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So you made our season 2 such a big success there. So thank you. And so moving forward, you were the first choice to bring back this year because of what you do and how unique it is and how kind of provocative it is. So I just think it's just, and I told you in the last episode. So if anyone out there wants to go back, look for Logan, the land expert in season 3 and listen to that before jumping on this one. Or listen to any episode, actually, but just me rambling here. And I just want to introduce you, welcome you back. And why don't we get started here? So for people that don't know it, why don't we jump in? How did you get to this spot today in land?
Yeah, I'll give you the brief overview. So I was a restaurant guy for a long time. I was a college graduate, but nothing relating to real estate. So I started 8 years. So I was like late mid-20s, right around there, and managing restaurants and working in construction as a project manager as well, kind of burning the candle at both ends. And I was sitting in my car one day and realized like I'm just getting by. I didn't really have savings. I had 3 kids, and I just saw a future where I was like, I'm just going to work myself into the grave, doing nothing but handing steaks to other people who are successful. So I said, I got to get into real estate. Right. That's what everybody around, in Dallas, that's all people talk about effectively. I don't know. And I looked at buying a house and renting it. And I was like, this is crazy. People are, they're going to leverage, hundreds of thousands of dollars, get a mortgage, put tenants in there, have all this risk and exposure. And at the time, I mean, people were trying to clear like $400 a month. It's like, that was insane to me. I was like, that's just if I worked an extra shift, and it's way less headache, So I started doing the thing. You fall down the rabbit hole on all the podcasts and websites and yada, yada, yada. And I stumbled into this guy who was talking all about land, and he had his courses and guru and all this sort of stuff. But it seemed reasonable to me because he says you can go buy a piece of land for $100 an acre and sell it for $500 an acre out in West Texas or, any of these desert regions. And I said, I could afford that. And I I did a little course. I tried to be as cheap as possible, but eventually after a little bit of persuasion and a few coaching calls, I started trying to acquire off-market land at a discount and then flipping it for a retail value. That was my first lots were these 5 and 10 acre tracts out in Culberson County, Texas, which is on my map way over here. It's the middle of nowhere. I think the entire county has a population of like 2,000 people. Something, I mean, it's just insane. But somebody back in the 50s or 60s had taken huge swaths of land and subdivided it into 5 acre lots, 10 acre lots, 20 acre lots. And they sold them in like the back of hunting magazines and things like, people would be flipping through, they get to the end and they'd see 5 acres of unrestricted horse country in Texas for, $100 down and $50 a month. And people bought it. But there is a whole market of people who never visited the properties. I'm talking most of them never ever went out to the property. They were only paying $10 a year in property taxes, but it was still not nothing, or they passed away and their kids got it. So there's just all these people who owned acreage out there who never had any intention of using it or visiting it. And for them, it meant literally nothing. For most of them, it was just a paper in a safe. It was a deed in a safe somewhere. So I sent out mail and they said, hell yeah, we'll sell you our properties. And I was buying them for really more like $50 to $75 an acre at the time. So I mean, it was small change. It was $250. I'd go buy a 5 acre parcel of land. And I would resell those to people like in Dallas, any of the major cities around DFW, San Antonio, all over Texas. But I'd sell them for $100 down and $100 a month for like 3 years. So after the second month, I was in profit, and then I would have a note that was paying me $100 a month for years. And that's how I started. It was really addicting. I bought and sold, bought and sold, bought and sold. And over a short period of time, we're making, I think at our high water mark, it was like $15,000 a month just off of notes, almost pure profit. I didn't have any tenants, nothing to worry about. But, eventually that market, more and more people entered the industry. So it was harder and harder to acquire land. So I've had to change and adapt. But I never wanted to go vertical. So I said, all right, I started working on properties that were closer to where I lived. I started doing subdivision projects where you'd buy, 100, 150 acres and then just cut that up into 10-acre ranchettes and sell those. On up to right now, we're doing entitlement projects. We're doing sort of major subdivisions. We have a 35-acre parcel just south of Dallas that we're subdividing into 150 lots and, potentially fully developing it with everything, all the utilities, roads, gutters, everything. And we also, along the way, started a funding company where we started providing the capital for other people do their own flips and developments and projects like that. And that's pretty much the full cycle. I started with a $1,000 loan from a friend 8 years ago. And, at this point we've done, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of deals, millions and millions worth of revenue. It's been just sort of an exciting journey.
So you're not giving out steaks anymore, I guess, is the answer to the question.
Well, I am opening a coffee shop this year, so I will be selling back in the service industry again. Yeah, I'm excited about that, but nothing against it. It's a good business to be in, but
yeah, Lauren's from it. I'm from it.
Hell yeah.
That's addicting too. You always want to get back into it, but then for me personally, like my elbows and my knees and my ankles hurt. So it's like, man, forget it. I'm happy sitting in my chair now. So
yeah,
that's great. That's a great background. So Lauren, do you have any questions for Logan off the bat?
Yeah, besides just bring me with you. I have a very, very similar background in hospitality and project management as well. So it's funny to hear how you come from the same place and still find a completely different direction in the same industry, which is fascinating. But the biggest question that is hanging over my head right now is how do you find this land? How do you find these parcels?
Well, that's like any other aspects of real estate. It's sort of ever evolving. When I started, you were literally just sending out letters to people. And a lot of people do that still, but due to the competitive nature and a lot of people really overvaluing their properties right now, most people are using like a multi-touch point system where you're cold calling, you're sending text messages, you're sending letters, and you're usually touching a qualified lead 5 or 6 times to get a serious conversion. I actually just stopped. What I did is when I started my funding company, I said, all right, I have experience in capital. I'm not going to do that part anymore. People, you bring me the deals and I will take my portion to help you through them and fund them. So I know a lot of operators. I don't claim to be an acquisition expert anymore. I was at the time. I was very good at it and we had a team operating and everything like that. But it got to the point where it was very expensive to find the sort of deals that I liked to flip, which was I wanted to buy cheap and sell high. And those are the first ones that everybody wants to, go after.
Exactly.
So right now, like the projects that people are typically bringing to me are value add projects or forced depreciation projects is what we call it. So instead of going to chase the big discount on land instead of trying to go buy something at 25 cents on the dollar, you can offer 80 cents on the dollar or 90 cents on the dollar if the property has a clear avenue to appreciate it, forced appreciation through entitlements or subdivision or whatever else. So that's the bulk of what we're seeing right now. That's kind of where the industry is trended.
Very cool. Now, how do you guys determine that appreciation value? Do you guys have like surveyors that you work with? Do you have touch points within municipalities to understand that development potential?
Well, I mean, you'd look at you could bring me a property pretty much anywhere. And within 15 minutes of looking over the area, I could tell you probably its best and highest use, right? So if you have a lot of people are bringing me properties that are maybe 10 or 15 minutes outside of a town that have road frontage. And the most obvious route is to subdivide it. right? Every time you make a property smaller, you increase the per acreage value. So then you just need to see really how much, or how small rather, can you subdivide the property and still make sense. If there's no utilities present and everybody has to drill a well and roads are very expensive, well, then it could just be the best option is to split it in half or split it into three different properties. Or it could be a threshold of, well, we know that we need at least 2 acres or 1 acre in this county in order to install a well and a septic system on the same property. So that's really the most dense we could do in this area. And then you just look at your road costs and optimize for it. It's actually relatively simple math. And once you train your eye to really identify really like the best layout, property layout or proposed plat layout for a subdivision, and you sort of have a decent understanding of the costs associated with the development or the subdivision, then it's typically solved on a calculator, or a spreadsheet. And it does get more complicated, right? Like each county is going to have its own restrictions and process for subdivisions. And like we're doing our first one in Indiana right now. And you have to go in front of 3 different boards for a simple subdivision. We're going to run a single road, private road to access 3 different lots. Very, very simple, but they have really high standards. So you really have to go through more of a process. But that's why, that's why I suggest if someone's going to get into any sort of land plays or land investments, to pick a market and become an expert in that market, or pick a product that you want to pursue the development of and stick to that. So it could be like, all right, I want to find small lots that I can just cut in half and add value that way. There's so many different ways to do it, but as long as you know the market and you know the costs, you'll be able to really just look at what's going on in the neighborhood to identify best and highest use.
That's a lot of homework right there. So that's great information.
Yeah.
What exactly qualifies as a land investment? Does it need to have a completely cleared? Can there be some sort of buildings on it, or is it just truly just raw land?
Really, I would say if the majority of the value of whatever it is that you're purchasing or investing your money in is the land itself, then it would be considered a land investment. For example, I know a lot of folks that will buy, say, 100 acres in Texas, but it has a house on it. But that's not really what they're in pursuit of. I mean, the first thing they're going to do is try to parcel off the acreage that has the house on it and sell that and get it off, because that just makes everything more complicated in the transaction. The whole benefit to land is most of the time you're not dealing with people living on the land. And so really when you get into that situation where people are living in it or attempting to live in it, or on it, I should say, then that's when I think it comes outside of the land investing realm. But to go a little deeper, there is actually, I would say, it's not only if the chief investment is the land, but if I would say the investment itself is even just backed by the land. Like there's a whole niche of investing in land where you're just buying and selling land notes. So oftentimes we will sell or finance our properties. So if I take a subdivision, I subdivide 10 lots out of it, and then I sell all 10 of those properties on a note, I could actually take that portfolio of notes and go sell it on the note market for roughly 80% of the value of those notes. If they're generated correctly, there's a whole, scheme that you have to follow behind that. But that way you can sell owner finance and still sort of cash out of the deal. So yeah, there's a whole sector of our industry that's just playing with the notes.
Yeah,
Land.
is that where it comes in, where land is truly passive?
Yeah, yeah, I think anyone who's selling the whole passive anything is just lying to you. I mean,
Yeah.
even a simple note portfolio, like I was on a call with a guy that I like him. He's a client of mine. He's bought multiple properties from me, but he still wants to be on the phone with me for an hour over what could be a few text messages, So you're still dealing with people and there's still complications that arise. Like I had a property out in Nevada, for example, that some guy just owner financed it to him. It was a real cheap property. It was like, all right, $500 down, $300 a month. And the first thing he did after I said, you cannot live on this property until it's paid off. You cannot improve this property. He goes and he parks an RV out there. He starts fencing it in. He starts doing all this stuff. And then he, unfortunately, sadly passed away very shortly after and stopped paying us. So he made like 3 or 4 payments, junked up the whole place, and then passed away. And, in our process, it was just a simple default. So, 3 months later, we notified him over and over again, no response. So we just listed it on market again. And I start sending people out to the property to purchase it. And they're like, there's someone living there. There's an RV here. There's all this junk out here. And I was like, so it's not passive. No real estate's passive. Anyone saying that lies. And even notes, if all you're doing is playing with notes, those notes are still going to default and they're going to be backed by the property, which means you're going to have to relist and resell the property. And then I'd say, which is probably like arguably the biggest drawback, is unlike a house, at the end of the day, when you owner finance something, it will sell. Like you're going to stop getting that income at some point because there's an expiration date on the contract. So all of those factors, I would say, not really. Now we could juggle. I mean, I think at the highest point we had something like 100 notes, and the maintenance was pretty simple. I still never had to go clean, fix the toilet or anything like that. But it was a serious chunk of effort every month to make sure everything was flowing. And people are always like, "Can I make a half a payment now and another half payment later?" You're still dealing with all.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The reason I say that is that is the first thing when people are even pre-ready to buy. That they see the TV shows, the Eric Estrada selling land in Florida, and it's like, no work. Yeah, invest and just sit back and collect. And we all know that that's impossible. But I just wanted to
It's
get
cute.
that out in the show, just because we're ready for real estate and just making sure that our listeners kind of get that feel. That why we chat on this and bring you on is really the true real life example. So thank you for that. So
Yeah, I would
really,
definitely say that, that's cute. Anytime someone starts saying stuff like that, they're selling you a course, they're selling you a something. And I have nothing against. I took a course. All of my success was content, somebody demonstrated the information to me and I was savvy enough to deploy it effectively. But there's kind of just an inherent difficulty when you're trying to teach a course like that, is you have to make it broad enough so that it's useful for everybody. But then when you make something so broad, it's kind of useful for nobody in a way. So that's why, even though I got an education, I did do coaching calls and things like that, most of my lessons were just learned along the way. I mean, they sort of taught me like a backbone or a structure around what real estate is and how to do it. But then everything else has just been slamming my head against a wall for 8 years.
that's pretty
Pretty
much
good.
all of us. So yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. That's why I'm wearing this hat to hide the lumps.
Now, I had a coach who, famous last words would tell us, listen, every transaction has hair on it.
hmm
Even your nuclear family with the white picket fence, every transaction's going to have hair on it. And for people like me, I'm assuming people like you too, Logan, like that's part of the fun. That's part of the challenge. It's like, okay, all right, what's going on with this one? How can we solve this problem?
Yeah, I don't like being bored. It at
Exactly.
least helps
Yeah.
with that.
Exactly.
Lauren, do you have questions?
Yeah. So I'm trying to think. So you mentioned some of the differences between doing what you're doing in Texas and Nevada versus Indiana. So, and that's something that people don't realize a lot of times about real estate either, is that it is very cultural. It's very regional. Things can vary from city to city, even within the same state, let alone
hmm
across state lines. It's why we need to be licensed in every state to practice. Now, what are some of the significant differences that you've noticed? You called out some with Indiana, but like, what are some of the other differences? Like, how are you going to handle a lot in Nevada versus a lot in Texas versus a lot elsewhere?
It's all going to follow the same process effectively, in terms of, all right, you have to, if you're going to do, say, a development project anywhere, right? You're going to be operating in a jurisdiction. That could be the county, you could be in a city, you could be in a, whatever. And then they're going to have a packet. They're going to have a subdivision packet. And once you open that packet, you're going to see wild differences from one area to another. So there's, in Texas, there's actually a state law that says if you don't improve the property at all, you're allowed to subdivide any acreage down into 10-acre lots without anything more than filing a plat. That simple, right? So that's super attractive to an investor. You're like, no red tape, sign me up. That's where I want to be. But that's completely the opposite case of other areas of the country. If you're going to, a lot of people will call it like not real estate investor friendly areas, whatever, California, Oregon, Washington, all of those areas have a lot more restriction. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. It's raising the standards, but it does create more complication. Every step is more expensive. I was talking to a guy who was a New York developer, and he said, he would go through 2 to 3 to 4 years or just in the entitlement process before he could do anything, leveraging millions of dollars, hoping that a public body, whether it's councilman or whatever, would eventually rubber stamp it and say it's okay. So those restrictions and how complicated and how expensive the process is usually the main distinction in forced depreciation. Though there's also some laws that can cause complication, even as simple as flipping land. Like there's some states, I'm trying to think, I ran into it on the East Coast, where if you bought and resold a property within a certain amount of time for a profit, you actually owed part of that profit to the person you bought the land from. Like there's all sorts of wild issues that you encounter. So I don't say that to really scare anyone away or say that one is necessarily better than the other, but you might need to be more of a ninja in some like areas of the country than others. But if you become that ninja, you probably have way less competition. So it could very well be worth putting all that time and effort and energy to understanding one area, as opposed to like what I do, which is I'm spread all over the map. So I have to be more adept at identifying and determining my risk assessment in each different area as quickly as possible. So that's kind of my situation, is I'm always like, all right, we have to start up here and then we have to go through this laundry list of due diligence to find out exactly where our risk exposure is at, because that directly affects the rate at which we lend money or whether or not we approve a JV deal or not.
So you would say the most important person on your team is the lawyer? You get every deal reviewed by some sort of legal, or?
No. I mean, most of the time we're going to rely on either ourselves, just in our experience, or we're going to rely on a local civil engineer or even just our development consultant that we work with all the time. He's been operating on projects all over the country for decades. So he may not be experienced with every single area, but he definitely knows how to pore over those subdivision packets and identify all the areas that could be an issue. And most of the time you can have what they call them like pre-development meetings with cities and counties and say, this is what I want to do. This is where we want the roads to be or whatever. And you kind of lay it out and you send them a preliminary plat and ask them, do you see any problems with this? Okay. Do you see any hoops that we're going to have to jump through to get this done? And most of the time they're honest with you. If they see an obvious issue, they'll tell you. But ultimately, it does come down to the fact that if it's written in the subdivision packet, that's typically the law. So they don't typically get to change it up however they feel like, they have to follow the rules themselves.
Yeah, I guess so. That's pretty smart. I kind of like how that's really more hands-on, because lawyers are just they're just so heavy on
Greedy
the
bastards.
overhead. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't want to like, if there's anyone listening out there that's a lawyer, hey. But anyway, it's Logan that said that. Anyway, no.
Yeah. No, I've
It
had
would
good
be
experiences with lawyers and terrible experiences with lawyers.
Yeah, yeah. So if someone's starting out and they say, "Hey," they get this light bulb on, and being like, "Hey, I don't ever see land moving." That, how do they start? Is it smart for them to divvy up time and really research it? Go to a realtor like Lauren and let her do it. What's your steps, and what do you expect out of someone coming to you to make the process easier, more effective, and efficient?
Well, ultimately, you ask like what their goal is. I mean, you can invest in real estate in all sorts of different ways, and land is no exception.
Mhm.
If you're starting with a lot of money and no time, you can go straight into learning how to be in my situation where I fund
Mhm.
deals, right? I just
Right.
created a network where people are bringing deals to me. I'm underwriting and approving or denying or whatever. But most of the reason they're coming to me is because I have access to capital, right? That's it. And experience. So if I approve a deal, that means it's probably got legs. Or you could be in the opposite situation. Like I worked with and sort of mentored a few people who they don't have any money. I mean, that's where I started. I had no money. I had no experience. So the advice that I give them is you should probably be on the acquisition side, on the lead finding side.
Mhm.
And you really need to lean into how you are able to handle calls. In land acquisitions, like I think most real estate, if you're very good on a phone call and you can express yourself concisely and understand emotionally the person on the other side of the phone, you are much more likely to get in a situation where you could have a deal, right? And kind of going back to the service industry, I ascribe most of my success to that marathon of trying to win over the affection and the money of people in a 1 hour cycle over and over and over and over again. I don't think anything has primed me better for real estate than that, especially like later in my career. You know, when I was working in restaurants, I was working in fine dining, and I realized that I could make almost twice as much money in a shift just through how I engaged with the same people, right? If my ticket average went up and my tip average went up simultaneously, I made a lot more money. I actually made much more money in like my moonlighting server job than I did in my full-time professional contracting job. So I really started to gamify it and understand how I could maximize my performance at every table. And I like created this little crazy diagram in my head of exactly how to do it. And I had all these little rules, like, and they sound crazy. I'd like, whenever there was a table of 3 or more people, I picked one person I'd pick on. Everybody loved that. Everybody loved. I'd be like, give them a nickname right away. Little things like that. Just never having a canned interaction. I would try to go up to every table and have a unique interaction with them. I would not say the same stuff. Here's our specials. You know, I was like, I want them to know that I'm a human immediately, because that's how people relate when they realize like, oh, you're an aspirational kind of screwed up individual just like I am. And I understand that you're half broken and half healed and whatever else. Like if you can figure out how to relate to people in a 1 hour time span like that, you're engineered for real estate, in my opinion, because all the math, it's 5th grade math. You know, you're basically doing a little bit of addition. Sometimes a decimal works its way in there, but like the math itself is simple. So that's all it is math and people. You know, sure, there's assets involved in it, but
So
Exactly.
yeah, go ahead. I
No,
was
it's
just
just
going to lend it over to Lauren, where if someone was coming to Lauren, what are some of the steps Lauren would take to qualify this a buyer, this land investor?
are you asking me how I would qualify a land investor?
Yeah. Well, as a realtor, what would you expect out of a realtor to
what do you want
qualify
Ooh,
as?
me
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you
okay.
want me to bring to the table? I have a client. How do I prepare them to come to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, all right, I'm trying to put myself in the situation. So you're saying if I were to go hire a realtor, what I'm looking for? Okay. So I have a very specific way in which I vet realtors. First off, like before I talk to them, most of the time I'm going to go find a realtor that's on one of the websites that buys and sells land, right? So I'm going to go to Land and Farm or Lands of Texas or whatever land website, and I'm going to look at the listings in the area that I'm either operating in or intending to operate in. And you're most likely going to see the same faces over and over again. Every once in a while, you'll get a no name from Keller Williams or whatever in there, but like it's almost very obvious, especially in Texas. There's gonna be a cowboy hat and you know a picture in a horse is in the picture in the background or whatever. So just through that alone, you're going to narrow down the list sort of dramatically. And then you're going to review their listings. So you're going to see the quality of the listings. There is an ideal time of day to take drone footage. So if you're taking drone footage of a property and they took it like at dusk and it looks terrible, like that's a failure. If they write like almost no information in the description, like there's all these obvious indicators that this person doesn't really know what they're getting into. And then I'll also look at the listing price. Like if they are listing something way above what I think someone would actually buy that property for, that's not someone I want to work with, right? Because an investor's got to be able to turn quickly. So I don't want to list at a retail value. I want to list below a retail value so that everybody's like, oh shit, we got to buy this property. And then I'm going to look at the terminology on the listing itself. Oftentimes, people are marketing properties to someone who's not even the buyer, right? Like the first thing when I'm underwriting a deal is I'm asking, who is the buyer? Who's the buyer at the end of this transaction? Because I could spend a bunch of time and subdivide properties in an area where there is no one looking for that sort of property in that area. And then you're a creek without a paddle, right? So if it's a hunting property and I'm reading through the description, they're not using any of the hunting terminology. They're not pointing out what's on the property. They're not telling you, where it's fenced in or not fenced in or the streams or, if they're not doing the obvious things to explain why this property is great for a hunter, then they're not the right person. So mostly just looking at listings is obvious enough. But then when I call them, there's a bunch of my aspects of my business on the marketing side that I just don't want to deal with anymore. I don't want to carry listing subscriptions to all the various land platforms. So I'm going to call and ask, do you have a listing agreement on all these different platforms? Do you have a buyer's list that you can tap into? When I'm explaining the property, I'm going to ask them who they think the end buyer is. And then I'm just going to listen to the terminology. Like if they don't know the terminology, if they're not willing to show properties, there's just a few things. Like if honestly, if they don't want a good commission, that's also an indicator. Like if I'm selling $100,000 property, I'm going to assume like a 10% commission for a realtor because it might take them showing that property 20 times or 30 times to get a buyer. And it's not in their city. They're usually driving 20 minutes out or 30 minutes out. So there's a lot of reasons that someone who's really good in land will demand a higher fee. And I will happily pay that fee because I don't want to do any of that crap. Right. I want someone else to do that crap. So, I mean, I could go on, but what I actually do anytime I enter a new market is I make a spreadsheet with all the same questions on it and all the different people that I'm calling on top. And I will ask the same questions and I will rate whether the response was good or bad. So I'll even use a spreadsheet to determine who I really want to work with. And the biggest indicator is when you call them, do they answer?
Yes. I can't tell you how much business I've won just because I return a phone call. Like it's insane.
Yeah. I mean, I've gone after on market deals. So these are actively listed properties. I'm a buyer and I'm calling the same agent over and over again. And they're not even calling me back.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. Also, I will go even a little further. In defense of Lauren, if anyone's really willing to give away their time to me, that's also a big indicator that they're desperate. So when I'm contacting someone and I'm like, hey, will you go check out this property for me? I think it's like an hour away from where you live. And they're like, sure, no problem. You're not going to sign anything. You're not going to give me any gas. You're not going to do nothing. That means they're probably desperate. You want someone who's like hungry, not starving. You want them to have an appetite to do deals, but you don't want to be the only one that's called them that year because they're not going to be the sort of person you want to work with.
Yeah,
So
you want someone to bite you back, where you're really requesting you want a churn to it. So you give them something, they give you something, so it goes back and forth. So
yep.
even I brought up the real estate, even the passive realtor, where they just swing open the door, expect you to have in your mind what it is that you're looking for, and then they go back and they're just an order taker and they write it
Mhm.
up and they go. But really, to be part of your team and really kind of generate the life that they want, they got to really put into it. And so, and that's what we try and start out with here with Ready for Real Estate is that interactions where if you call us, you're calling someone that's gonna light a fire under you, the education, the knowledge, the possibility, and overall the lifestyle and the life that you really want when you first thought about the idea. So, and probably
Mhm.
even more. So, but that
Yep.
again, great question, great answer, great follow through on that. So,
Yeah, you just complimented yourself on giving me a good question. That's impressive.
yeah, hey, wait until I start talking in the fourth person here.
I'm not doing my part. I just said great question.
Yeah,
I missed it.
yeah. But Lauren, you have anything else to add?
Yeah. One of the things that I always emphasize to clients is building a team, is building that team to be able to accomplish those goals. Ideally, it involves me, but their lender, their financing, their attorney. What does that team look like for you? Who are you working with on the day to day to make these deals happen?
In this day, so I used to have a larger team, like a professional marketing team and all this stuff behind me. And I realized most of it was just unnecessary. And I really did not like having so many people that one, I was accountable to, and they were accountable to me. I just didn't really, I realized that's not the dynamic that I want in real estate. It took away a lot of the joy for me for a long time. So I've shrunk my business down to what I think is the bare minimum. It's me and my partner, Ryan, and we have an admin or a transaction coordinator that we can just sort of hand projects to as they come up. We have a development consultant. He's not on retainer. We bring him deals and he partners in the deal, I shouldn't say just partners, but we pay him directly. And then most of the time, since other people are bringing us the deal, that is the final piece, which is the JV partner. And that person's typically responsible for being the manager of the deal. So they're handling the day to day operations, and we're advising for the most part, or I should say approving, like yes or no on how funds are spent or which way things should go in our opinion. But that is the team. I mean, well, yeah, a bookkeeper, accountant, like there's some things that you just need for running a business. But I've learned you're not, unless you have these grand goals, which I delusionally had in the past of creating some sort of empire or something like that. I mean, I say just keep your team small and efficient. And in real estate, you just have there's so many different options for creatively partnering on a deal. Like, I don't want a big payroll. I don't want to be issuing checks all the time. If I work with somebody, I want them to have a stake. I want them to get paid out of profits, just like I'm going to get paid out of profit. And if they really believe in a deal, then they'll be okay with that path. And that's who we work with on a regular basis. And then every once in a while, if there's a specific property or area that I want to target, one of my goals this year is to acquire 1,000 acres for 1,000-acre subdivide project. So that is finding a high quality realtor and establishing a relationship with them in the area that I'm looking at. But it's also going to be hiring some third party services to do some lead generation for me. Because again, I'm just not at a point in my life where I can sit on a phone for 8 hours a day in order to find those meaty deals. I need someone else who's going to find, qualify, and then I'll close. I'm fine with the closing aspect and the negotiations, but you don't need a big team, but you do need people you can really trust. 100%.
Very
Great
true.
question.
Very true.
Great question.
Well, thank you.
Great answer. Thank you.
No, that's awesome. So anything more, Lauren?
No, I don't think so. I think that, it's definitely a conversation that is going to continue brewing more and more questions the more time we spend with it. But actually, that being said, Logan, if we do have questions, if anyone does want to get in touch, work a deal, anything like that, how can we get a hold of you?
Yeah. So, well,
You
quick
wanna
plug,
talk
you can
to-
listen to my
yeah.
podcast, the Land Fixer podcast. I post, I don't know, a couple times a month, 3 times a month. But you can reach out to me at that email address. The Land Fixer is kind of my nom de plume. Landfixer@gmail.com is my email address there. And you can reach out to me. I started a program. I actually do this about once every 3 months where I open up myself to 15-minute phone calls with people, especially if it's land. I don't really know much outside of land. So unless you just want to chat for 15 minutes, but if it's land related or you have questions about a specific deal or a problem in your business or a specific property that you're struggling with, whatever it might be, I'm doing free 15-minute calls with folks. And usually those blow up. I try not to do more than 100 because it gets taxing. But that's a great way for me to expand my network. And this year I'm really focusing on community, by building my coffee shop and creating a physical community, but also trying to just get to know as many people as possible and see who I can help. So, if you want to schedule a 15-minute call with me, I'm not going to try to sell you anything. I don't really care. I just want to be helpful. Then you can email me at thelandfixer@gmail.com and I can get you on the schedule.
Awesome. That's fantastic. And that's so generous to give your time back like that, because it's especially not selling anything. How many times do we get stuck on those calls? Yeah, it's a free 15-minute call. I'm going to rope you into a $1,500
Yeah.
training session. But no, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you
No
for
interest
sharing.
in that. Yeah.
That's great.
I will guilt you into listening to my podcast though. Be like, all right, you listen to 2
That's fair.
episodes.
That's fair. And we'll have it linked for all of our listeners too, so we can guilt them collectively to go and
Yes.
listen to you as well.
Collective guilt is great. Yes.
And so taking a person who has no knowledge through, what would, in your mind, a experienced or one of your students, one of your novices, become more of an expert and be able to run on their own? So what would you expect at the end that people would know? Like the steps, what to avoid, how to do the due diligence, what makes
Mm-hmm.
land buildable?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you can give just a quick example of that, and I apologize for taking that long question longer. So, but I think the hat's on too tight tonight. But
Okay. So just to be clear, the question is
yeah,
how I would coach
expect
somebody from a
right,
novice
yeah,
position.
yep,
Okay. Well, since I'm not really a firm believer in any sort of generic education, what I do when I work with somebody new is I'm going to ask them. I have my own little form whenever I bring someone into coaching, which is like, all right, where you want to go? What are you trying to do? Because I found that people either don't know, and that's a real big issue. Like if you're going to start and you have no idea what you're trying to do, or if your motivation is just solely money, I probably won't be interested in working with you. I really want to work with people that have some sort of passion that they're trying to fulfill in their life. Like For me, real estate, I would not call it my passion. I enjoy it, but I enjoy most things. I'm just one of those people. Like, whatever, it doesn't matter. I enjoy most things. But really, my goals are about building affordable housing, community. Like, that's my main driving purpose. And I found, like, okay, well, the only way for me to achieve that is to get a level of freedom. And that's what real estate did for me, was provide me that vehicle of freedom. So typically I'm going to find out what inspires them, what they want to do, what sort of business are they capable and qualified of running. And ideally I can mesh those together in conversation and find out a broad structure of what they're trying to get to. In land, yes, you have to learn all of the fundamentals of how to handle a transaction, how to negotiate, how to acquire leads, how to do due diligence, how to sell. I mean, a lot of that is sort of stock, and pretty quick to move through, and also free all over online. So if you're a motivated individual, you don't need to hire anybody, right?
Right.
But it is helpful to maybe have some guidance, I think, in that structure, right? I want to find what would be the backbone of your business. Like for me, now I know I don't want a big staff. Like I know some people who are killing it in land and they have like one VA in the Philippines and that's it.
Mhm.
So those are the people that I'm best at working with. I'd say, like, if somebody wanted to create this giant company and have a boardroom at some point, like, I'm probably not your guy. But if you want to run like a little efficient business and make more than your friends and they don't know why are you making all this money? Like, that's what interests me, right? So yes, all of the basics,
Great
but
answer.
mostly it's like, how do we actually build a business that will get you to your vision?
Yeah. And knowing Lauren, you probably knocked, well, you didn't see her. She probably hit the floor when you said affordable housing. Her and I have talked a few times about this is what it's all about. So
Yes.
it's about getting the community together, building that community, and having affordable housing for everyone. So when you said that, we're all linked up, we're all lined up for that. So that was such a great answer. So,
Yeah.
and very last question to end this. How has AI affected your business and what do you think it will do to land coming up?
Well, I think the most important thing is that AI has generated a lot of really annoying people who won't stop talking about AI. Fundamentally, I think that's the structural change that has occurred. No, right now, for me, I'm not an AI expert. I went down the rabbit hole for a while thinking this was like revolutionary, and maybe it is, or maybe it will be someday. But mostly what it's useful for me now for is like, for example, we talked about those big subdivision packets. Like instead of pouring that over, you just upload the whole subdivision packet, right? And then you can query it. You can be like, all right, will this be an issue? What are the biggest issues? Da, da, da. Where in the code does it say this? That's super useful and that's super valuable. It does handle a lot of like really stupid things, like, or not, maybe not stupid things, but instead of me calling a lawyer every time I have a legal question, typically I can ask very pointed questions and it can query a system and help me gain some knowledge, instead of paying $3, $5, $800 an hour to have somebody go look in a book and try to figure it out. So right now, for me, AI is mostly like kind of helpful. I did go through a period where I was trying to get it to like, I was building the system where it was going to like draft blogs for me every day using current news and give me all this SEO and boost. But it never did any of that stuff. I tried over and over again. I took some courses with people who were like, "No, you just have to ask it just the right way and then it'll do it." And that never happened for me. I would sit
Right.
there and try to make the best prompts over and over again. And maybe I'm dumb. I don't know. I think, oh, and the other thing is every time I would work really hard and sort of figure something out, then somebody just came up with the tool for free. So it's just like I learned that it really wasn't worth my time to try to be at the top level of this, but rather just kind of wait for the useful tools to fall into my lap. And that's how it is so far. I mean, there's people who are building like dialing, like AI bot dialing systems and things like that. And I'm like, that's the opposite of what I want. Like, I want to be able to know people and I want to have real phone conversations. Like my whole, like the way I raise my kids is the opposite of that. The way that I try to take my life is the opposite of that. So I'm not leaning into it. Hopefully I'll be the generation that is out of here before the robot takeover and all that.
Well, they're gonna need land to park them things on, so or build them. So
But
maybe that's your final act there. But
uh-huh.
again, great answer. Thank you for your time today. Again, you want to give out your information?
Yeah, just you can check me out if you need funding for a land deal. My company is landpartnerfunding.com. My land selling company still has plenty of properties up there. If you're looking to buy vacant land, you can go to primelandexchange.com. Listen to my podcast. That's the Land Fixer podcast. And yeah, if you want to schedule a 15-minute call with me, especially actually, I will plug if anyone's listening that is a landowner that's like, hey, what's the best and highest use for my property? I will partner directly with landowners and help you get the most money for your property while putting money in my pocket. That's the most important part. But hopefully it'll be helpful for you as well. I think that covers it. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, again, any last words, Lauren?
No, just thank you so much for coming on. This has been awesome, and I know I'm going to bombard you with questions. I hope our listeners do too. But yeah, I look forward to having you back again and being able to continue the conversation and maybe get some affordable housing in the works.
But yeah, we have to talk
Yeah.
about that. I have big plans.
So,
Cool.
how good are you at recognizing voices? Because I may call you a few times in different voices. So,
That's what AI is for. We'll just use that
yeah,
to swap voices. We'll play with that. We'll modulate.
Yeah. Matt, Darth Vader, who is this?
not Matt. Who is Matt? Yeah. Anyway, again, folks, thank you today for listening in to our Ready for Real Estate. Our expert today, Logan Swanson, the land fixer. You just heard how you can get a hold of him. And that's it for today. If I could tell you anything, just be ready. See you next time. Thanks, folks. Take
Cheers.
care.
Bye, guys. Thanks so much for listening. If you're looking for the links we mentioned today or want to connect with us on social media, everything you need is right there in the show notes. Join our community on Beehive for more market insights. And if you have a topic you want us to cover, reach out. We're always listening. If you need support on your next real estate deal, let us know. Matt Grace is a licensed realtor with Keller Williams in Pennsylvania, and Lauren is a licensed realtor with eXp Realty in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Remember, the market is always moving. When opportunity knocks, will you be ready? We'll see you in the next one.